This case was quite famous in Japan. It was even included in the Japanese book Scary Floor Plan, which in turn got made into a movie. And while it garnered media attention at the time the crime took place, the full details were lost in translation for us English speakers, which is a shame, as knowing it will make you question if Yukio was a victim, or really the devil that his classmates used to call him. But the question is, what made it so popular for those who understood what truly happened? Maybe it was the fact that the serial killer at the time was only 16 years old. Or maybe the fact that it was his mother who drove him to seek revenge in the first place, leading him to do those awful crimes. This man is named Yukio Yamachi, and some people who see his pictures wouldn't even think he is capable of crime. Born in August 21, 1983 to a construction worker father and a part-time supermarket employee mother, Yukio had always lived in poverty. Maybe this was the reason that made his father an alcoholic, or his mother a shopaholic who got them into debt. Yukio's father would then beat his mother when he was drunk. Nonetheless, the young Yukio worshipped his father, up until the point when his father became sick. Yukio was an elementary student when his father vomited blood from liver cirrhosis. Scared for his father's life, he called his mother's office for help. Those were the words that Yukio's mother instructed him. That very same night, Yukio's father was dead. From then on, Yukio blamed his mother for his father's death, even hearing his mother at the funeral saying. This further solidified the idea that the mother didn't want to help Yukio's father when he was sick. Later, in interviews, Yukio would admit that he hated his mother. Yukio became more withdrawn in school after his father died. According to reports, he thought his classmates were beneath him. Some said that he started bullying by breaking windows in school property and being aggressive to classmates. But other reports said that it was the quiet Yukio who was bullied at first, and he was only retaliating because his classmates were mean. Either way, they named him the devil after he started hitting people, a nickname that would prove to be true in just a matter of years. But surprisingly, Yukio had tried to live a normal life at first. While his school and home life was a nightmare, he wanted to make something of himself. He tried applying for jobs, first in the construction industry and then the garment factory. But as he was still in middle school age, his young body wouldn't be able to handle the tasks, and he was denied. His friend at the time got him into newspaper delivery instead. Yukio flourished in that area and made money for himself. With his meager earnings, he would frequent toy shops and play with friends using trading cards. Meanwhile, his mother got them into trouble. On the outside, it would seem that mother and son had a good relationship, especially since Yukio would treat his mother on paydays to Katsudan. But to those in the know, their real relationship was becoming more troubled. Yukio's mother was a shopaholic and would often buy stuff when she was stressed or depressed. Oftentimes, she would steal money from Yukio's wallet. Their financial status got so bad despite Yukio's efforts to help his mother, that their water and electric bills were left unpaid. Yukio's only reprieve at the time was when he happened to meet a woman. Yukio was 16 when he met a woman named Miyuki. She was 7 years his senior, but Yukio didn't care. Miyuki worked in one of the toy stores that Yukio frequented, and because Miyuki was stylish, he fell for her at once. But there was another problem. Miyuki had a boyfriend, who she had been dating for about 5 years. Not one to give up though, Yukio asserted himself to Miyuki until he finally got her heart, and the two of them had relations. But Yukio's mother, watching from the sidelines, was not impressed. After a while, Miyuki began to receive weird calls. Someone would call, but when Miyuki answered, no one would talk. This went on, and Miyuki had no idea who would harass her like that. But Yukio took one look at the phone records and understood. It was then that he marched back into his home and confronted his mother. On the evening of July 29, 2000, furious at his mother, Yukio began to interrogate her about different things. At first, it was about the mounting debts and why debt collectors were always hounding them. His mother denied things and brushed him off. Yukio asserted himself until the topic of Miyuki came up. That's when his mother became more stubborn, invalidating him. Yukio felt more and more miserable. For him, his mother was punishing him somehow. Not only was he robbed, abused, and made to suffer financially by his mother the moment his father died, now she was harassing his girlfriend too. Yukio wanted revenge. 2 days after that, on July 31, 2000, police from Yamaguchi Prefecture received a call. Yukio had done the unthinkable by killing his mother, taking care not to hit the head first, as this would be an easy death. With the woman who had supposedly tortured him gone, Yukio should have been happy. But sadly, he didn't stop there. Years later, his revenge would find the innocent. Because Yukio was only 16 years old when he did the crime, he couldn't directly go to prison. Japan believed in the reformation of youth, so Yukio was put in a juvenile home. There, Yukio was provided education, vocational training, and everything he needed to get back to society. He was even provided counseling from a psychiatrist to treat him. His psychiatrist had considered Asperger's syndrome. But as it was not deeply studied at the time, the diagnosis was not solidified, and Yukio didn't receive special care from it. But everything seemed to be going well aside from that. Yukio had friends in the juvenile home that even accepted his crime. One friend of his joked when Yukio was about to get discharged if Yukio would kill again. Yukio then would respond in a cold manner that he really couldn't tell, an answer that should have warned the people around him. But sadly didn't. Back in society, Yukio was considered a new man. Japanese laws allowed his crime to be off record because he was a minor at the time it was committed. But he was penniless, without immediate family, and his only relatives shut him away for good. Because of this, Yukio soon found himself in the company of fraudsters. Their main target was to garner money from pachinko shops in the area. Pachinko is played using small steel balls that you will enter into a machine. Using a spring mechanism, the steel ball is then launched, and if you're lucky, it will go into a catcher in the machine, which will then trigger a payout. Yukio was taught how to counterfeit these steel balls to garner cash. But pachinko owners were always one step ahead. Soon, Yukio and his gang was caught in the act. The gang moved to a different city, but Yukio was tired of his boss named Muraoka. Muraoka had a habit of hitting his comrades when they were short on money or they weren't performing well. Desperate to escape the abuse, Yukio left and settled to live in the nearby park from his former boss's hideout. But far from being safe, the young man was brewing a plan. A plan that Yukio would later deny and say was made out of impulse. In the same building where Yukio's gang operated lived sisters Osaka and Chihiro. Both had goals of getting out of poverty, so they went to Osaka to live their dreams. Maybe it was coincidence that got Yukio to notice them. Or maybe it was due to the fact that, according to some witnesses, the older sister looked like Yukio's old lover. Either way, on November 17th of 2005, Yukio proved that setting him free was the wrong decision ever made. Yukio followed one of the sisters as she was coming home. And as soon as he saw Osaka open the door to get into her apartment, he lunged straight for her. At the time, the other sister, Chihiro, hadn't gone home yet, so Yukio had to wait for her as well, keeping the older sister barely alive so he could finish them together. both sisters were stabbed repeatedly and violently to their deaths. Yukio did the crime inside the sisters' apartment so he would have time. He even had the audacity to steal the contents of the piggy bank of the sisters before he set the place on fire, trying to leave the traces of his crime behind. Yukio was still free after doing the multiple crimes. If he went far away from there, he could have just hidden and lived a normal life. But just weeks later, on December 5th, he was arrested for suspicion of breaking into a building. Again, he was let go, but not without the police being alerted that he was already in the area. On December 19th, he was arrested again, this time for robbery. Cops put 2 and 2 together, and judging from his previous crime with the murder of his mother, he was brought in for the questioning regarding the sisters' demise. And he admitted to everything, even saying these disturbing words of why he did it. "I can never forget the thrill of beating my mother with a stick. I wanted to kill someone again, even if it wasn't those 2, and see blood." Until the very end, getting revenge on his mother was the factor that supposedly turned Yukio into a serial killer. He was shaped with the warped view that he needed to get back to people. In fact, when interviewed by the police, he would tell these words: "I went out to kill people just like I would go shopping." From this, he might be thinking of those classmates before who bullied him. He also said this in order to get revenge against Muroka. "I did the crime in the apartment building, so he won't be able to use the hideout." This clearly states that he was getting revenge for how his old boss abused him. And lastly, there was the fact that one of the sisters he killed looked like his old lover. Because he couldn't have Miyuki in the end, maybe he was taking revenge too. 3 years after the sister's death, a verdict was made. On July 28th of 2009, Yukio would be hanged. At the end of it all, this is where nurture and nature comes into question. Do you think that with some nurture from his mother when she was alive, Yukio would turn out like this? Tell me what you think in the comments section. See you in the next episode.